Welcome to the Teach Big podcast, where big energy, big ideas, and big results are just the beginning. I'm your host, Randi Whitney, and whether you're in year 1 or year 20, we are here to fuel your passion and help you teach big in every single way. That's right, teach big, B-I-G. Here, education is inspired, energy is required, and support for teachers is absolutely non-negotiable. I would greatly appreciate you liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting so that you too can become a part of the Teach Big community. This episode is actually part 2 of a really neat episode with a really neat guest. His name is Mike Fowler. He was an educator for many moons, and he started his education in the early 70s and rose in the ranks in his particular district. He might tell you a little bit about that, or I guess we could just refer to part 1 for that. But what we're doing today is we are comparing and contrasting what it was like to be an educator in the 1980s and 1990s to current day. We're talking everything from parents to teachers to kids to schools to admin to environment. We're just comparing all the things, and we're seeing what are the great things that came out of the growth over the years, and what are some of the things we wish we had back. So if you'll help me welcome Mike Fowler back to part 2, everybody.
Glad to be here.
Yay. Oh, I have a special button I've been wanting to play for a while, so we'll do that part again. Welcome back, Mike Fowler.
Wow, thank you. I didn't realize that many people would be here.
So we just thought that would be fun. Okay, thanks for humoring me, everybody. All right, so let's get started. Also, keep in mind, sometimes I may call him Mike, but other times I very affectionately refer to him as Dad, because that's exactly who he is to me. Some people might be able to tell that on our faces if you're watching the video of this. I have literally been stopped in the mall, and people have said, you have to be related to Mike Fowler somehow. I'm like, yep. I'm his kid. So, also fun fact for the audience out there, you know how when you unlock a phone and you have to put in a code, or if you have the facial recognition, when I have my hair in a ponytail, this is not even a lie, guys. When I have my hair in a ponytail, I can unlock his phone with my face.
She failed to tell you that she got pulled over by the police one time in Pasadena. And he came up to the window and asked her if she knew she was speeding, and she knew she was.
Sure.
And without seeing her ID, he said, "Are you Mike Fowler's daughter?" Fortunately, she was, and he let her off, and she got to school on time. And
right, yeah. So I didn't know, though. Should I answer yes or should I answer no? That was the question. But
he could have been one of my students that I had in D Hall a lot.
Right.
Or he could have been a really good kid.
Right. So good news. He was a good kid, turned good cop, turned. Thank you for making a good decision that day, sir. I promise I learned my lesson. Even without the ticket, I learned. So let's get started. Speaking of the personality, within Teach Big, our big mission statement is to help teachers become experts in their content, in their craft, and in their complements. Basically, that means that you need to know what you're teaching, know your content. You need to know how to deliver it. And you have to be able to build those complements between you and students, you and parents, you and administration. This is the relationship piece of it. But within the craft part, let's talk about that for a minute. Within the craft part, even especially in today's world where we feel like there's a lot of to-do lists to get done, a lot of things to accomplish, a lot of check marks to check off. Within that, one of the things that I feel we need to really help teachers do is show off their personalities. I think it's going to be imperative for the relationships to be able to build, for the students to really know their teachers. You know, I think everyone who knows me knows my favorite color is teal. And so everything from what's my teacher's favorite color, does she have kids or does she have dogs, or what does she do on her holidays, really getting to know the personality of the teacher helps the student have buy-in. And when they have that buy-in, they learn at a completely different rate than if they had no connection to that teacher. And it even spills over into test time. So often if you're tired and you're taking that test, you're like, oh, I want to just stop doing this. But then you think, no, I don't want to let her down. You have a relationship with your teacher. And so that's just the gusto that keeps you going, that one more question, that one more written response. So can you tell me about a time where a teacher's personality just really stood out to you when you were an administrator?
Absolutely. I had a brother-sister set of teachers when I was a principal, and they were just so effervescent and so outgoing. And I felt like they were in a classroom setting where they couldn't utilize that. So I called them in my office one day and I said, okay, I'd like to do something that takes advantage of you two and your abilities. They didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. Come to find out, I discovered that they were very interested in zoos and plays and drama, a lot of things that were outside the classroom setting. And so I asked them to develop a one semester class that would bring students in, and they don't have to worry about their textbook. They don't have to worry about their electronics. They come in and they determine what they want to learn today and how they're going to learn it, what they're going to learn next week and how they're going to learn it. I even had them develop the name of their class. They called it the collage class. And in that class, they were able to develop their own curriculum using the joy that was in those teachers. They were able to go to flight museums and then write papers about what they saw at the flight museum.
Wow.
They were able to go to the planetarium in Houston and then come back and discuss what they saw, how they felt about things. And these weren't always the best kids at Sam Rayburn High School. These were kids who we weren't meeting their needs. That class started with a handful, and by the end of the first semester, kids were begging to get into that class. By the end of the second semester, we had to have another class of it. So I developed a program that met different needs of students, and they enjoyed it, and they probably learned more in those 2 semesters than they did in some other classes, unfortunately. So taking advantage of the art of the teacher and their skill set and applying it inside that classroom door made a difference for the teacher, for her brother, because it's a brother-sister team, and for the 20 students. It ended up being 40 students. It ended up being 100 students. And I got approval from the state of Texas to use that as a full credit.
Wow.
And they did it. And I had many of those parents come to me on parent night, which I don't know they do anymore, but on parent night they'd come up to me and say, this is the best thing that ever happened to my kid.
Wow.
They loved it. They couldn't wait to go to that class. They wanted more of it.
Wow. I love that. And the fact that you guys viewed it so important at the administration level to go to the state level to get the approval so that kids could get credit for it and really reward them for loving school. I love that. Oh, neat story. I did not know that entire story. I remember pieces of it, I guess because I was probably a student living within it. I didn't remember all the pieces, but that's really neat. So how do you think expectations for teachers has increased or maybe shifted over time?
Largely, it has shifted, and there's so much of an expectation for teachers because of the state tests that they have to cover so much material and only have a certain amount of time to do it, that teachers today don't get that free time, that free expression time, that ability to take advantage of their skill set. They need inspiration, and you give those teachers inspiration and they will run with it. If you stifle them and tell them teach this at 6 o'clock and this at 7 o'clock and this at 8 o'clock and then go to lunch and here's what you're going to do after lunch, you take away that joy that teachers have.
Well, and I think in the world that we live in now, there is so much of that that is probably not something that we're going to change anywhere in the near future. So one of the things I've really started having a heart for and tackling is how can we exist within those confines? How can we still show our personality in those moments? And even if it's a truly verbatim scripted curriculum, or if it's a hectic schedule that's your script, or whatever it may be, maybe it's your own to-do list for the day, but how do we still really grow and show our personality even within confines that were not there 20, 30, 40 years ago? And so that's one thing I'm actually going to be discussing in my book called Beyond the Script. So we can't get rid of the script. We can't get rid of the hustle and bustle of the day. We can't get rid of our to-do list. And I know that has become more compacted than ever. So how can we get amazing within those confines? How can we do that?
Take the pressure off the teachers.
Yeah.
They've got too much pressure. There are 100 ways to teach how Hannibal went through the Alps and the elephants attacked Rome. There's 100 ways to teach that. Mm-hmm. Allow the teacher to do it in a way that's fun for them, energetic for them, and turn them loose. Don't constrict what they're teaching. Monitor it, but don't constrict it. And demonstrate with the good teachers. Have them do lessons for you. You're asking how you could do it. Have that really good teacher teach a lesson in the auditorium to 20 teachers and show them how it works. And when you have teachers seeing good teachers produce, you're going to get good teachers. And I think that's what you're headed. How do you free them up to do that? You can't free them up if you restrict everything they teach all the way down till the bell rings and you go home. If you allow them to open up, be free, then I think you've got a chance at that connection, that connectivity.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more and more important as we go through time. I think that that's definitely a wave we need to ride and surf it really, really well as we go through, because we're going to have to address how teachers can still be autonomous in the type of world that we live in right now. So what do you miss? I know you're no longer in the classroom. I definitely understand that. But what do you miss most about teaching in the 1980s? What is something you think that we lost that you think, oh, man, if we just had that back?
The thing that I miss, and I saw it going away at the end of my teaching career, was the ability to close the door and connect with kids on the spot and talk about things that didn't have anything to do with Aristotle or Socrates or Plato. It had to do with their life. And the teachers are limited in the time that they have to do that kind of association. The free association of being able to talk with 20 or 30 kids and apply what's going on right now in the world to what happened 500 years ago. We don't get to do that. You got to teach what happened 500 years ago. They memorize it and they move on. You don't have any application.
Gotcha. So what is one thing, let's go backwards on this a bit. What is one thing from today's world that you wish you had back in the 80s?
I can't answer that question.
You have to answer that question.
I loved the way it was in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And I don't see the fit that I want, which is why I don't teach anymore. And so I retired. I wasn't able to be me anymore. I had to be somebody else. And I would prefer that we allow the freedom to teachers. And I can't answer that question. There's nothing that I don't want the computer. And I don't want the electronics. I want the face-to-face. Let's talk. Let's talk about what happened, when it happened, where it happened, and how does it apply to you today, and how can it apply tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I guess that's pretty honest then.
That's straight up.
So, since you were obviously in administration as a principal, you were principal as well as associate superintendent, you had your hand in a lot of pots. One of those areas that you definitely had a hand in was professional development for teachers. So, what do you think what's one thing we used to do in professional development that you don't see us doing now? Or what is something that you have seen that has carried through and has remained really strong and really good? Tell me about professional development. Compare and contrast that for me.
Well, primarily, professional development has to happen with a professional. You have to have that ace that can go and teach those that need it. And if you have a really good teacher that can do that, you need to use that teacher to teach others. And like I mentioned a little while ago, teaching a lesson to 30 teachers is invaluable, because those 30 teachers will pick up 30 different things that you do, little innuendos or little understandings, eye contact, the ability to convey information. And I think that a really good teacher is what you utilize to get really good teachers.
Interesting. So, what do you think about, and this is going to get dicey, what do you think about what's going on in education today with the curriculum standards and that type of thing? What was in place back then to tell a teacher what to teach versus what we have now, and what are the pros and cons of both?
Well, don't use the textbook so much. Use yourself. Understand that you have to train yourself in the data that you're going to convey, but figure out the best ways to convey that data. Not do the questions at the end of chapter 1, the questions at the end of chapter 2. Some of the things that I used, not perfect, but it worked. I had students write their own questions. You've read this, you've studied this, you've heard me lecture on it. Now, if you are going to develop the test, what kind of questions would you ask? I'll bet you wouldn't ask the date of the bombing of Hiroshima. I'll bet you would talk about how many people actually died there, the Enola Gay, and you would apply all of the information that took to get to that particular spot. And when you allow the kids to be part of the instruction that drags them or draws them in and allows them to have buy-in and understanding and be a part of what you're teaching. And the kids loved it. I had them write their own tests, 5, 10 question tests, and pass them to somebody else in the classroom.
And did the other person have to answer their questions? That's how you did it? Wow.
And then we talked about, what questions did you write? Why did you ask that question? What were you looking for in that question? Instead of me giving them a question and them getting it right or getting it wrong and not understanding anything about it and then waiting for the next test to come. They understood that they made up that test because they heard the data, and it made sense to them because they obviously wrote the question, and it also made sense to Johnny next door who took the test, and they exchanged them.
I love that. So one thing that made me think of when I was, I want to say, 10 years old maybe, a friend of mine, your next door teacher, she had a daughter, we were the same age, and Jamie and I both wanted to go to space camp. And so you had said, well, the only way we could afford that is if I teach an extra period in the day, which at that time was a 0 period in the class or in the schools. And in order to do that, you did that for the following semester. You said, but in order for me to do that, since I'm the one who takes you to elementary school, because Mom was a teacher at a junior high on the other side of town. So you were the one who took me to school and brought me home from school, because the elementary school was right across a field from the high school. And so you said, but I cannot take you to school that early. So you're going to have to stay with me through that 0 period. So I will do this extra to earn your money to go to space camp, but you have a responsibility toward going to space camp. And that is, you're going to be one of the students in my room for the whole semester. And that's how you're going to earn the money. And so I was like, oh yeah, I want to be with all those high schoolers. I was, I think, 9 or 10 years old. And so I came into that classroom, and I'll never forget one of the things you did. And I still do it in many of my seminars. You may or may not know that, but on the first day of the semester, you passed out manila folders, blank manila folders, to every single student, and including myself. You said I was going to sit alphabetical like everybody else. There's my little 8, 9-year-old, 10-year-old self, and I was going to be a kid. That's what I was going to do. I had to take the notes. I had to take the test. I had to do all the things, do my best. So I got my manila folder, and what you told the students was, you are going to have to write small, because you're going to want to write down everything you ever wanted to know on the final, but on this folder. And you're going to be very happy that you did come final time. You even handed out map pencils, and you could color it up. You could do whatever. I remember when you were talking about King Tut, and I remember drawing a little King Tut and how that thing went around his head, whatever that's called. And I remember making little stripes around my 9-year-old version of King Tut. And so every day you would say, now get out your manila folder. Let's add these notes, add these notes. Of course, you taught social studies. So we kept adding and adding and adding. At the end of the semester, I don't know if you remember this or not, you said, okay, everybody raise your folders in the air. We all raised our folders in the air. And you said, now pass them forward. And all of the kids were like, what? Are you serious? You said we could use them on the final. And you said, no, I did not say you could use them on the final. I said that you would be glad that you did this on the day of the final. And aren't you glad? And they were so mad at you at first. And so we all pass in our manila folders with all of our notes, tiny, tiny things written, little maps drawn on them, all the things. And then you handed out the final, and you said, now you're going to take this final without those manila folders. And if you don't make a grade that you're happy with, I'll let you retake the exact same test, and I'll give you your folder. And then everyone settled in and was like, okay, that was a good deal. So we all took the test, and I'm sure it wasn't that day. I'm sure it was the next class or whatever. I don't remember timing, but I remember you announcing that everyone, including 9-year-old me, had made an A on the test. And you asked, does anybody want to retake it? And everybody's like, no, I'm happy with an A. And then you said something I'll never forget. You said, do you know why all of you did so well? And they just kind of sat there. And you said, it is not because you studied, because you relied on that manila folder. You thought you were going to have that manila folder. And you told the kids something I'll never forget. You said, how many of you visualized what you had put somewhere on that manila folder when you were answering the questions on this test? 100% of the little hands went up, including 9-year-old me. And you said, don't ever forget this. Always have something to write with and a paper with you. Because once you write it down and you visually see it, you're giving yourself a resource forever. And you said, I didn't want it on a whole bunch of pieces of paper. I wanted you to take out the same manila folder every single day, because I wanted your mind to visually see your notes every single day. And you were right. I saw King Tut after I drew him every single day. And I remembered where I drew him on that page, and I was able to visualize the notes that I had taken about King Tut. So when the question came about King Tut, I was like, oh, I know where to go in my notes, but I didn't have my physical notes, but I did have them in my visual memory. And I remember always having a manila folder handy for classes through high school, definitely through college. And then I would just put whatever handouts or activities that we would do in the class inside that manila folder, put it in a file cabinet. Now, of course, during Hurricane Ike, I lost a lot of that. But the idea remained that you were not just teaching us King Tut. You were giving us a lifetime skill. Write it down, visualize it, see it, because when that paper is gone, it's still in your brain. And that's why you guys did so well, because you took the notes yourself. I didn't just hand them to you. You took them. So that was very, authentic for us. And then we saw them every day of the semester when we opened up our manila folders. So you gave us the repetition piece, the ownership, then the repetition, and then you took it away and you made us apply all of that. And so I don't know if you really know that impacted me that much, but
I did not.
But anyway, so it really did. And I share it actually in a lot of different seminars. Depending on the seminar, I'll pass out a blank manila folder and say, write as small as you can. This is all you get. And I've had so many teachers who say, wow, that's so neat. Where'd you learn that? I was 9 years old. I wanted to go to space camp. And so of course, my friend Jamie and I, we went on to space camp and had a wonderful, wonderful time. But sidebar, you also taught me that, and I think this is another thing, it's probably a whole different podcast, but you weren't going to just do the work for me to go to space camp. I had a role in earning space camp for myself. You had me come to that class. I had to do the work. I didn't get to sit in the back. Of course, we didn't have cell phones then anyway, but I didn't get to sit in the back and color. I had to earn it. And I think that that's very important. I think that really contributes to my work ethic, not just that moment, but that philosophy throughout it all.
That's awesome that you tell that story, because I did the same thing with teachers. Mm-hmm. When I did staff development with them,
Really?
I would give them a manila folder. And
I didn't know that.
say, okay, now here's what we're going to do today. And the things that you find important, put on your manila folder. And the next time we have staff development, bring that manila folder again and do the same thing. Write down stuff that you find application with. They did it, and it worked. They remembered it. Some of them had it years later. They still had the same folders.
Neat.
They could have done the staff development by then. They had so many notes on it.
Sure.
But the whole idea was you gave them a tool, and you gave them ownership in the tool. You didn't tell them what to write on there. They can write whatever they want. So in their mind, they processed what I should put right down there. And when I wrote it down there, it made sense to me, and that's how I'm going to remember it. If you ask them to memorize everything that you tell them, you've wasted your time, their time, and the school day.
Well, and I think what's really neat and comparable to that right now, when my own kids were in college, especially my daughter, she very much wanted to make her notes beautiful and perfect and organized and color-coded. I know that Lolo has shown you her notes that she would do in that big iPad. And it's that same thing that she would add to that one page. She would have this big page and she would write tiny with a fine point in her iPad. And it would be the same concept that she would just go back to it and go back to it and back to it. And I think we have to work really hard to make sure that technology isn't replacing those really neat skills, but enhancing those skills. We don't need to just replace it and say, okay, you can go YouTube it and find it out. No, you still need to take the notes. You still need to make it authentic. You still have to have ownership in it. You still have to have the visual memory. And so I think we're at a crossroads in education where we need to make sure that technology is here to stay. So we need to make sure that we're using it really well. And how can we be creative in how we use those things? Because teachers are brilliant. Teachers are creative. And so I think we are tasked for a time such as this to figure out how do we blend these really old, great things we've always done with the new tools that we have. How do we mesh all of that together? Because you could call it the perfect storm if it was going to go awry, but maybe it's not the perfect storm. Maybe it's this beautiful after the storm. And so how do we pull all that together? And I'm really interested to watch. It's going to be fun over the next, of course, now I'm in the phase of grandkids are next. My kids are all grown, as you know, and graduated college and all in their careers. So when my grandkids start going through, I'm curious to see how well we combine the yesteryear with today.
Let me throw one more sidebar in there if we have time.
Sure.
When I was an assistant principal, we got the freshman class, and then you carried them to the sophomore, the junior, and the senior. And my first year of having the freshman class, I took a notebook in, and I gave every student in the assembly that day that was a freshman a piece of paper with all my expectations for them. And I told them to take notes as I was explaining to that auditorium full of kids. Write down everything I tell you. Keep it in your pocket. Have it as long as you're in this school. And if you ever get in trouble and you come to my office and you pull that piece of paper out and you show it to me, I'm going to let you off the hook.
Oh, wow.
I had kids do that up to their senior year.
Really?
Boom, hand me that piece of paper. Here's when I was a freshman. You had me write this stuff down. I wrote it down, and I was late to class, and here it is, and I'd let them off. To go in one step further, on graduation night, Scotty came up to me and said, I forgot my hat. Of all the things in graduation, you forgot your hat.
Got your hat.
And I said, I'll find you a hat. He pulled out his piece of paper and he said, will this get me the hat?
Oh.
He was 18 years old and he was able to draw from that. He said, here
Wow.
it is. I've got it.
Yeah.
And the point being, if you include the children, the teachers, the staff in the development of what you want done and you have their input, you will you will solve the needs for them. Scotty, to this day, Scotty's probably 60 years old now. I don't know. He'll remember it.
That is really neat. Wow, that is just pouring into people and letting them have the ownership and the application of it and a relationship. That story just really exemplifies so many of the things that I try to accomplish with the Teach Big mission statement. You know, I just really want teachers to love being a teacher and love on kids and love what they're teaching. And I think we need to make sure that we're marrying the old with the new to make sure that passion can still be there. I think that's very important.
This is what it's all about. You're able to teach teachers, and you're doing what I've described through this whole podcast. You take the good demonstrator and you apply their instructional skills so that other teachers can see it. They're going to apply it in the classroom. They're seeing the good example, and then they find the application.
Sure. So good. So good. Okay, so we are at our last question. What advice would 1980s teachers give today's educators?
That's easy. Love your kids. Just love on them. And it's the kind of love that they'll always remember. It's you're going to be the teacher they remembered because you showed care to them and for them. You involved them. They weren't just a number. They didn't just sit there in that chair and then walk away and never think about you again. You are that teacher who showed that you loved them in a way that they understood that they wanted to do good for you. And when the student wants to be that goodness for the teacher, you've won the game. Yeah. So the answer to your question is simple. Love them.
Okay, so I was just joking. I decided I had one more question. So if that's the advice from the 1980s teacher to today's teacher, you've heard people say, I wish I could say to my 16-year-old self. So what would today's teacher tell a 1980s teacher? Would she warn them? Would she say, hey, guess what's coming in excitement? What would you go back and tell your young teacher self in 1980?
Put your boots on, get ready for a big ride, and enjoy what's happening in the world and find out ways to be part of that happening in the world and allow them to be themselves. Be yourself and understand that you have a personality like nobody else's. Take advantage of it.
That's some good stuff.
I don't mean to get too deep there, but
no, that's good stuff. That's really, really, really good stuff. Well,
you have an extra question?
Oh, well, I could keep going. Do you have extra thoughts? Do you have extra things you want to say? How about that?
I absolutely do.
Do it.
The children of today need to know that they're important. They don't need to walk away from school with the thought of they didn't care about me. The children, the student of today, even college students, need to walk out of that room understanding that they were important while they were in there. They were told some important stuff that has life skills application. And if they're able to walk away with that, they feel good about themselves. There are a lot of kids who go to school who can't wait to get out. You need to be the kind of teacher that the kids can't wait to get in for you.
That is a perfect way to conclude this. Be the teacher. Say it one more time. You did it better than me.
You just say it yourself.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so be the kind of teacher that makes all of the kids want to come to school.
That's right. They want to be there. They can't wait to get there. Not that they can't wait to get out of there. They want to be there. It's the same when I coached. They loved coming to the practices, and they wanted to do something to make me feel better. I always wanted to do something to make them feel better. When I was coaching baseball in high school or football or whatever it was, my goal, and the goal I would hope most instructors have, is give them something that they can always use, not what they can use on the test for Friday. Give them something that has lifetime application. Make them want to come to your class and be a part of that class and be a part of the congealed part of the class, instead of being the loner who says, I don't need this class, I'm never going to use this stuff again. If you're teaching stuff that kids are never going to need again, you're wasting your time. You teach things that kids can use when they walk out.
And I think a big part of that is a lot of times, in the language arts world, they're like, why do I have to write? This takes forever. And so they really don't see the need for, when am I ever going to write a story? When am I ever going to write a paragraph? So I think that's where I come in as their teacher, that it is my job to relate to them why they need what I'm teaching. And no matter what it is, I need to make sure that they see a true need for it, so that their want to is always there.
Absolutely. I remember taking advanced math classes thinking, I am never going to use this again in my life. And I didn't. Never have used it. I've never used calculus again in my life. Why would I take calculus? That was a whole semester that I could have been taking something else that had application, like maybe shop, or maybe band, or maybe something.
I guess we need to have a conversation in a different podcast about helping kids not try to fit into everything, but fit into their thing.
I agree.
I like it. I like it a lot. Wow, that's some good information. Thank you so much, Mr. Mike Fowler, also Dad. And I really do appreciate you spending your time coming and talking about this. This is what we talk about around the kitchen table when you and Mom come over. These are a lot of the same stories, but even I heard some new stories. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today. If this message inspired you, share it with a colleague, but better yet, bring it back to your own classroom and start using it with your whole heart. Start teaching big. B-I-G. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. And until next time, teach big, think big, and believe in the greatness that is already within you.